everybody, Eric Dorward here with the Spartan Rocketry Club, continuing our build of the Estes SpaceShipOne. It is finishing time, which means I'm going to be using some wood fill in this particular video, and I'm going to need to do actually what it was intended to do for once. I bought this stuff because one of its uses is to fill in grain in wood, balsa in this case, but I'm actually going to go a bit beyond that this time, and I'm going to use it as like a putty, as a spackle kind of thing, because we have some spots wherever these joints were that I really want to fill in, because they're not going to look great. So in any event, part of the job then is, that we're going to do with this, is we're going to fill in the balsa grain, and for that I've taken some of the putty, the wood fill, and I have added a bit of water to it. So I've made like well, it's pretty thick at this point, but it's a paste more or less, and I'm going to brush this on. This might actually be a little bit thick. I used, basically 2 scoops this size, so maybe like half a tablespoon of the fill the moment, and I added just a splash of water, and this is always kind of hit or miss with the viscosity. The more you use the more viscous it gets, and this is probably not going to be enough, but it should be plenty for whatever I'm going to do in this video. So that's going to go sit for a little bit, and I'm going to get it all over my hands. But in any event, the first thing we need to do is we're going to patch the gaps here. Now I have a big putty blade. This is huge. Couldn't find my smaller one. Not sure where it is, but this will do for the time being. And I'm going to get some of this stuff. I don't need very much for most of these holes, but basically I'm just going to kind of, well, I'm going to fail. There we go. I'm just going to put some of this on, and then I'm going to use the putty blade to fill in these holes as best I can. And this, this is straight out of the can. I'm not cutting this at all, because this is, there we go. This is exactly what this stuff was meant to do. So I'm just going to kind of cram it in where I need it. This is all going to get sanded down at some point after the other layer. I'm going to just do both of these at the same time. So after this layer that I'm going to brush on, after it dries, then I'm going to sand all of this stuff off. I don't need to do this in separate phases, I wouldn't think. And I am making a bit of a mess. That is kind of par for the course. And it also looks like some of this blade's a little rusty. It looks like some of the rust is coming off too, which is probably not great. Alright, so that's basically how this is going to work. I do need to do like all the gaps, and there are 8 of them, I suppose. There's 2 outward facing on each side, and there's 2 inward facing on each side. There we go. This might require a couple passes, which would not surprise me at all. And I'll just kind of plug it in as best as I can, and then the blade is only to smooth things out, but I feel like I probably removed more than I should have in doing this, at least on this side. So if this takes more than one pass, it takes more than one pass. I can live with that. Anyway, I'm going to do the interior parts later. Don't need to do that right now. It's basically the same work. In the meantime, though, this probably needs a little bit more hydration, but not very much. I'm going to start brushing this stuff on. The goal here is I'm going to put this stuff on all the surfaces, the wood surfaces anyway. I'm not going to put it on the plastic because there wouldn't be any point. And then I'm going to sand it all down, and in doing so I should, in theory, remove or at least mask most of the grain. So this is actually, the thickness is pretty good that I have today. It's probably a little thicker than I want, at least to start, because like I said, the more I use this, the more it's going to dry out. And then I'm going pretty viscous stuff at the end, so I might end up rehydrating this, adding the teeniest, tiniest bit of water as I go along. But yeah, this is just, you know, you don't have to paint this really well. You don't have to worry about the brush strokes. Try not to get any big globs. Big globs you'll have to sand off, but you're going to sand everything here. So if you end up with stripes or streaks, they're going to come off when you sand them. I would be careful about the little bits here though, because that's going to be hard to sand one way or the other. And I'm also going to be careful about the edges. Now, usually when I'm doing this, I've rounded the fins already, so I want to be very careful about, you know, just globbing big old chunks of this stuff onto what were nicely shaped rounded edges, but since I didn't round any of this stuff, that's kind of a non-issue. Still, I don't want to have any big obvious bumps, because I will have to sand them off. Alright, continuing on, let's do this part of the fin. The nice thing about this too, so this is step one in a 3-step process, which sometimes I'm going to have to repeat various parts of it. But this part is the quickest because this stuff dries very, very quickly. So I can sand this off in, you know, as little as 30 minutes or so, and then I can move on. The other stages, which are using a sanding sealer, which is basically a paint, and priming it with spray paint primer, well, especially the primer takes just about forever to thoroughly dry to the point where you can sand it. That takes, you know, the better part of a week before I really feel comfortable sanding it. So, time consuming, to put it mildly. This goes very quickly. And I'm going to do half of this. I think that's probably enough for the purposes of this recording. And there's a big blob. We don't want to leave that. If you want, you can put this stuff on the edges too, and in fact, I generally try to do that for a couple of reasons. One is that this is white, and you know, it's kind of nice to have just a uniform color. The other reason is that the laser cut parts, well, the white part masks the burn, which is kind of nice. But the other thing too is that the wood is porous, and it's got a lot of holes in it. So, oops, I need to fill that. Well, I guess I'm going to fill that now with the putty blade. Put that aside for a moment. I'm just going to take a little pinch of this stuff, actually. I need more than that. And just kind of cram it in there. I am touching a wet surface, which isn't great, but I'm going to have to repaint the back of this. I really should have thought that through a little bit more before I actually did it. But what are you going to do? And let's just kind of plug this in there, just smear it across. It does have the consistency of like Play-Doh, so I'm going to have to go back onto the back side of this where I'm touching. It would have been nice had I, as I said, thoroughly thought this through before painting the whole thing. So when you do this, even if it's not this kit, of course, do think it through. Alright, so just retouch everything I touched here. Actually, it's not that bad. This stuff was already drying. finish this part up. Anyway, plugging in the porous part of the wood where it's cut is actually a good idea. It will certainly look better. Getting that first layer of paint on tends to be a little, it doesn't always look great if you haven't done anything to that, to the cut edges of the wood. Alright. Again, this is not smooth by any stretch of the imagination. This stuff is not super consistent in its application, but that's fine because it's not supposed to be. It's going on to fill in gaps, and it's quite good at that. And then wherever I didn't get it particularly smooth, well, good news, that's what the sanding that comes next is for. The other nice thing about all this is that this is water soluble, so this is a really easy cleanup. It comes out of the brush way easier than paint. Alright, let's just take a quick look here. There's some edges there that need to be filled in. That'll work. I did get a little bit of this stuff on the plastic. Let's try to deal with that. That I can just kind of like push off with my fingers. I don't even need to scrape it. Alright. I think that that's 1/2. There's a spot there. 1/2 of this prepped and ready to go. Alright. I don't think that this is good enough, the fill in these. I'm probably going to have to spackle it a second time, and that's fine. We'll see after I sand it down how much needs to be done. But overall, passable. Alright, I'm going to continue painting all this. Might need more. Hard to tell. Probably do need a splash of water in here because, as I say, it is getting a little too viscous at the moment. But I think that's going to do it for this particular video. So I will continue this off camera. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.